Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randirhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
A lot of people have asked me what I think about Black Lives Matter. Well, put simply, I think that they do. Goddamn.
The vast majority of Negroes still feel that the best way to deal with the dilemma that we face in this country is through nonviolent resistance. And I don't think this vocal group will be able to make a real dent in the Negro community in terms of swaying 22 million Negroes to this particular point of view. And I contend that the cry of black power is at bottom a reaction to the reluctance of white power to make the kind of changes necessary to make justice a reality for the Negro. I think we've got to see that a riot is the language of the unheard. And what is it that America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear that the economic plight of the Negro poor has worsened over the last few years.
How many summers like this one do you imagine that we can expect?
Well, I would say this: we don't have long. The mood of the Negro community now is one of urgency, one of saying that we aren't going to wait, that we've got to have our freedom. We've waited too long. So that I would say that every summer we are going to have this kind of vigorous protest. My hope is that it will be nonviolent. I would hope that we can avoid riots because riots are self-defeating and socially destructive. I would hope that we can avoid riots, but that we will be as militant and as determined next summer and through the winter as we have been this summer. And I think the answer about how long it will take will depend on the federal government, on the city halls of our various cities, and on white America to a large extent. This is where we are at this point, and I think white America will determine how long it will be and which way we go in the future.
Oh, North Carolina. Oh, North Carolina. It starts with bathroom bills. One day you're just hassling some transgender folks, and the next thing you know, a guy's killed and there's riots in the street. Oy. Pat McCrory, the man who has sowed so much discontent and disorder in North Carolina under his leadership, has declared a state of emergency in North Carolina. I would say North Carolina has been in a state of emergency since they elected Pat McCrory. He's been trying to drag North Carolina back into the Jim Crow era because he's got some sick love for nostalgia, I'm guessing. Either that or he's a world heavyweight champion racist. I can't tell. Or just a homophobe and a racist. Or some combination thereof. I mean, the mayor of Charlotte says they're not going to make the police video footage public. Why not?
What I can tell you that I saw, and I was very clear when I talked about this before, is the video does not give me absolute, definitive, visual evidence that would confirm that a person is pointing a gun. I did not see that in the videos that I've reviewed.
Oh my.
So what I can tell you, though, is when taken in the totality of all the other evidence, it supports what we've heard in the version of the truth that we gave about the circumstances that happened that led to the death of Mr. Scott.
Oh my God. So they won't release the video, partly because the video doesn't support what they've said. There's no evidence of a human pointing a gun at an undercover police officer. It has no evidence that shows that Mr. Oh God, there's so many people today in my head. That he was pointing a gun at the police officer when his life was taken. There's no evidence. So release the damn video. Let the public judge for themselves. What are you afraid of? Riots? It's a little too late for that. And I got news for you. A lot of the guys who served at Camp Lejeune, a lot of the soldiers, a lot of the ex soldiers who served at Camp, they're part of the protesters. They have been quoted as saying last night in North Carolina that they're still serving their country. That's why they're protesting. There was one guy who said that if he had done what the police had done in Afghanistan, he would have been put up on charges. You can't do what is being done in North Carolina in Afghanistan. He said he saw people being just thrown into the back of a paddy wagon at the protest. And he said, you couldn't even do that in Afghanistan. I mean, it's amazing. It's going to take all day because we have so many things to tell you. So many things to tell you. But the other reason why they won't release the video is because they're buying time. See, there's a new law that Pat McCrory, the bathroom bastard, the guy who won't prosecute anybody for taking a black life, the guy who won't release the video, passed a law. And it doesn't go into effect until October 1st. Oh, let's look at our watches. One more week. But as of October 1st, there's a new law that says that police video footage cannot be released without a court order. Because they had the foresight to realize that the stuff that they were doing could lead to something like this. So remember yesterday we said there were no body cams? That's not true. They were wearing body cams. We're just not allowed to see them. And if they can prolong the agony of Charlotte for one more week, if they can delay, then the new law that Pat McCrory and this crazy GOP legislature passed saying police video footage can't be released except by court order will go into effect. I guess they had the foresight to prepare for stuff like this, knowing what their police officers do, but they didn't realize it was going to happen so late. This is just horrific, okay? This is just the worst. And of course, at a black church, thank God Donald Trump had something to say. He was concerned at the black church about black people being shot. Okay, so let's just back up one day. This was Donald Trump at the black church.
I must tell you, I watched the shooting in particular in Tulsa. And that man was hands up. That man went to the car, hands up, put his hand on the car. I mean, to me, it looked like he did everything you're supposed to do. And he looked like a really good man. And maybe I'm a little clouded because I saw his family talking about him after the fact. So you get a little bit, different image maybe. But to me, he looked like somebody that was doing what they were asking him to do.
Donald Trump at the black church with Don King, who let the N-word fly. Don King killed 2 people. You know that? Yeah, no. Don King had shot a man, and he got away with it, and then he stomped a guy to death and got away with it. That's why only in America. So of course Don King loves Donald Trump. But then they were pre-taping a appearance on the Sean Hannity mess. And there he called for stop and frisk to go national. It didn't air last night because Donald Trump got bumped because they can't pass up a chance to cover riots. Not protests, riots on Fox News, right? And they got this erroneous report that somebody had been killed. It was civilian on civilian violence. I'm sure it was a Trump supporter, clashing with a non-Trump supporter in the open carry state of North Carolina. What do you expect? But nobody died. But anyway, he was preempted, so you didn't get to see. So I guess we get to see tonight. This is the preview that they released.
Well, one of the things I'd do, Ricardo, is I would do stop and frisk. I think you have to. We did it in New York. It worked incredibly well. And you have to be proactive. And, you really help people sort of change their mind automatically. You understand. You have to have, in my opinion, I see what's going on here. I see what's going on in Chicago. I think stop and frisk. In New York City, it was so incredible the way it worked. Now, we had a very good mayor, but New York City was incredible the way that worked. So I think that would be one step you could do.
Okay, let's just review right there. In front of a black audience, Donald Trump said this man in Tulsa looked like he did everything he was supposed to do. He looked like a good man. He looked like a good man. He decided that because he heard his family grieving. Okay, and that won him over, that this was a good man. But of course, he was being introduced by Don King, who, had taken 2 people's lives and got away with it at a black church. Then he goes on Sean Hannity, and for that audience, for that particular crowd, he says, oh no, stop and frisk has to go national. Is he aware that these things are on tape? Or does he care? Because on the one hand, he says the black community is in the worst shape it's ever been. Ever. And then on the other hand, he's saying we need to use a ruled discriminatory by the courts, practice of stop and frisk that stopped disproportionately 87% African-American males in New York City, 4 million stops producing about 3,000 guns, okay? And so it didn't work, and it wasn't started by Rudy Giuliani. The policy under Rudy Giuliani was more anal rape and a toilet plunger and 41 shots if you go to take out your wallet. The stop and frisk stuff was declared, a policy under Michael Bloomberg, who called Donald Trump a con man and a fraud. Now, the courts have ruled on stop and frisk, and they said it is unconstitutional, that people have a Fourth Amendment right against unlawful search and seizure. Okay. And so stop and frisk is being modified. But let me just tell you this. He now says, Donald Trump, that he misspoke on Sean Hannity and that he didn't mean that stop and frisk should go national. He only thinks it should go into Chicago, meaning the south side of Chicago, except they already do that in Chicago. They already do stop it. So this is like Donald Trump stands there and says, we need extreme vetting. And I go over the 2-year process that a refugee has to go through in order to get to the United States, where if they fail any of the biometrics, can't produce the records, can't, prove to the United Nations that they are fleeing violence in Syria while they're in the refugee camp, the UN goes and, these people make their plea for asylum. And then the UN vets them, number one, right? And the whole process begins there in the refugee camp, and there's biometrics and there's documentation, and they go and they look at the house to see if the house was bombed to smithereens, or if the family was killed, or if they're still in danger from the Assad regime, or whatever it is, okay? And then it keeps on going. And there was an infographic. We tweeted it. Go look at my Twitter feed. It's still there. I mean, there's so much, and it takes 2 years because we do extreme vetting. Donald Trump tells the ignorant masses that are yearning to not be free, that are yearning to have an authoritarian, demagogic dictator lord over this country, that we don't do it. And then he says his solution for gun violence has nothing to do with the proliferation of guns, illegally, by the way, in Chicago, where they have strict gun laws, over the border from Mike Pence's Indiana into Chicago by people who are gun running illegally. It has nothing to do with stopping that or anything to do with guns. No. It has to do with stop and frisk, which they already do, just like we already do extreme vetting. What is wrong with this man? He loves to call for things that already exist. Like racism, come to think of it. Ooh, maybe he'll propose that we give the police cars so they don't have to patrol on foot. We can call them patrol cars. Oh my God, this is just, and it doesn't work. Oh, and it's unconstitutional. So it has all the hallmarks of a Donald Trump idea. Racial profiling, that is what he's calling for, racial profiling. And if you don't believe that, let's see what would happen if cops started randomly stopping white people who open carry. Let's just see what happens. Oh, you get it now, white people? Good.
For a commercial-free, on-demand, whenever, wherever listening experience, visit randyrhodes.com for your personal premium podcast today.